Evening News with Harry Reasoner substituting for Walter Cronkite. And Eric Severide in Washington, Roger Mudd in Washington, Ike Pappas in Tel Aviv, Israel, Robert Shackney in Buenos Aires, Argentina, Morley Safer in Carnarvon, Wales, Marvin Calb in Washington, and Charles Carrault on the road, tonight in Spivey's Corner, North Carolina.
Good evening. The House, involved in a showdown over extending the income tax surcharge, argued its way toward a crucial vote tonight. Roger Mudd reports.
The House is now in the midst of the final passage vote on the surtax extension. It is expected to carry by a margin of 15 to 20 votes, which will send the bill to the Senate to complete congressional action. The Senate already has indicated it will need at least a month of hearings and debate. Officially, the surtax expires at midnight tonight, but the gap between midnight and the Senate's approval is being covered by a special 30-day resolution continuing payroll deductions at their present rates. The new extension, worked out in compromise between President Nixon and the Democratic leadership of the House, extends the surtax for 6 months at 10% and for 6 more months at 5%. It also repeals the 7% business investment credit. It will produce about $9 billion in revenue to help President Nixon balance the budget. Late today, the House rejected by voice vote a motion to send the bill back to the Ways and Means Committee with instructions to repeal the 7% excise tax on new cars, a motion offered by Republican Chamberlain of Lansing, Michigan. Debate began in the House shortly before 1 p.m. Eastern Time today, but the oratory was familiar and appeared to produce no change in sentiment. The proponents argued that without the surtax, America might wake up in the morning in a panic or a recession. The opponents argued that the surtax did little to curb inflation during the last year, but neither side was able to prove its argument. Roger Mudd, CBS News, Washington.
The government took steps today to regulate the fees paid to doctors and dentists under the Medicaid program. The limitations will take effect in 30 days. Costs have risen sharply, and there have been widespread charges of abuses and fraud under this program of health care for the poor. Also today, the Senate passed and sent to the House legislation to permit the states to control the costs of Medicaid. President Nixon today chose a high-ranking insurance executive to study spending in the Pentagon. The White House said that Gilbert Fitzhugh, board chairman of Metropolitan Life, will head a blue ribbon panel to conduct a comprehensive review of Defense Department organization, research, and procurement.
This is a bottle of ice-cold Coca-Cola sitting on a piece of ice in an ice-cold Colorado river. If watching this bottle of ice-cold Coke is making you want one, get one. This is a short commercial and you won't miss much. And when you get back, the sparkling, refreshing taste of Coke will make the next commercial go even better.
The tantalizing fragrance of Rapid Shave smells so good, you won't want to shave it off.
Smells so good, you won't want to shave it off. Smells so good, you won't want to shave it off. Smells so good.
Rapid Shave in juicy lime, tingling menthol mint, and the fresh wake-up fragrance of regular.
Smells so good, you won't want to shave it off.
In South Vietnam, an American official said today that the North Vietnamese appear to be lifting their siege of the Special Forces camp at Ben Het. There's been a sharp drop in enemy shelling. Officers at the camp expressed the belief that the North Vietnamese force, an estimated 3,000 men, is withdrawing from the area. They give most of the credit to B-52 bombers that have been hitting enemy positions. CBS News correspondent Don Webster cites another possible factor. He suggested that the North Vietnamese may have been seeking publicity in the Ben Het attack, and they got it. The Viet Cong warned today that the Allies can expect retaliation for what the enemy called the murder of more than 100 guerrillas by U.S. and South Vietnamese troops. They implied in an underground radio broadcast that American prisoners they hold may be the target of reprisals. The U.S. command declined comment on the charge and the threat. Egypt has denied a Tel Aviv report that Israeli commandos carried out a raid deep inside Egyptian territory and destroyed a high-tension power line linking Cairo with the Aswan Dam. Officials in Cairo said all power facilities in the country are working normally. In Jerusalem, Prime Minister Golda Meir referred to the reported raid in warning Arab nations about further attacks against Israel. She said those responsible should not be surprised if they are hit sevenfold in response. Earlier in Tel Aviv, Arab guerrillas set off a big explosive charge. We have a report on the aftermath from Ike Pappas.
The Arab terrorist bomb went off at exactly 18 minutes past midnight, when usually heavy Sunday evening crowds are heading home after strolling along busy Dizengoff Street or stopping at one of the many cafes that line the avenue. It appears as if the terrorists placed their bomb inside a small Jeep-like vehicle and then drove it to a quiet, dark street a block away from Dizengoff and left it there to explode. The concussion was so severe it could be felt for many blocks around. Immediately, several cars near the bombed vehicle burst into flames. One automobile was virtually lifted off the street by the blast and hurled into the midst of the burning cars. It was apparent that terrorists intended to kill or injure as many civilians as possible. The bomb was set to go off at a time when the side streets near Dizengoff are crowded with people heading home. But at the moment of the blast, by chance alone, this particular street was only lightly traveled. No one was near the immediate blast area, or he surely would have been killed. As it was, only 10 persons were slightly injured. Police immediately cordoned off the area and rounded up about 20 suspects for questioning. At the end of it, this was a city badly shaken to be reminded once again that even on a warm summer night, after a restful weekend, the war in Israel is never that far away. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
A major Argentine labor leader, Augusto Vandor, was killed by terrorists in Buenos Aires today. Vandor, a moderate, was the head of Argentina's steelworkers union, and he had opposed a general strike to protest the current visit of presidential envoy Nelson Rockefeller. But apparently Vandor was a victim of the inter-union violence and political turmoil that have taken 22 Argentine lives since May. Rockefeller himself continued to receive extraordinary security as he met today with President Juan Carlos Onganía. Prior to Rockefeller's arrival last night, there were some disorders that followed a funeral for a young labor leader who had been killed on Friday. Robert Shackney reports.
Anti-government demonstrations are against the rules, are strictly prohibited on the day that Nelson Rockefeller is to arrive in Argentina. But there was no comfortable way for authorities to stop this march. This was a funeral for the victim of a police bullet, a 28-year-old man killed during street disorders just 2 days earlier. The dead man was an anti-government activist, a labor union leader, with at least some associations on the extreme left. Authorities say he was killed while attacking a policeman. His friends say the police gunned him down without provocation. The militants, mostly students, began demonstrating at the moment they cleared the cemetery gate. What had been a quiet march turned noisy. The shout was directed at police. Asesinos, killers. It was at first just a shouting protest. No rocks, no violence. The only matter thrown about were handbills tossed in the air denouncing the government, denouncing the Rockefeller visit. But everyone knew it was only a matter of time. As they marched, the student voices grew louder, the crowd's behavior grew more boisterous. And then it was only a matter of minutes before riot police made their move. They wasted no time. One police charge, gas grenades, and the demonstrators scattered. All told, the active, organized, noisy protest had not lasted more than 5 minutes. That's the way things are being run in Argentina today. The police then followed up, arresting just about any suspicious-looking person they saw. They raided a small restaurant nearby. Anybody who might have been involved in the disorders was taken into custody. Some of the people arrested obviously had nothing to do with what had just happened. But if they were young enough, if they were students, that was enough to be caught in what was a very broad net. In a way, Governor Rockefeller could not have picked a worse time to visit Buenos Aires. Not that he could have anticipated this when his trip was first scheduled. He's coming at a time of great political instability, when the future of a government is in doubt. His presence here makes a political situation that's bad enough just that much harder. Robert Shackney, CBS News, Buenos Aires.
Nigeria announced today that it is assuming full control of relief efforts in its civil war with Biafra. External relief aid for the two sides had been coordinated by the International Red Cross Committee. Biafra has been depending on an airlift of emergency food supplies and medicine. A Red Cross official in Geneva said today that if Nigeria takes over the entire relief program, then very little in the way of aid will reach the Biafrans.
Let's take a close look at a new padded bra by Playtex. It's the closest thing to you yet. See? Playtex put a new softer fiber inside. It's just like natural softness. stays soft. Can't shift, can't bunch up, even after machine washing. So it always stays soft and natural. It's the closest thing to you yet. New Playtex Soft-Line Padded Bra.
This woman has what every woman wants. Soft hands and hard nails. No lotion can give you both. Only gloves can help. Playtex gloves. They're fully lined to keep your hands safe from water that's too hot, rough cleansers, detergent that's too strong. Yes, only gloves can help you have both soft hands and hard nails. Playtex gloves. So flexible, you can pick up a dime.
In Cardiff, the capital of Wales, police tonight are searching for suspects in a post office explosion. No injuries were reported in this latest of bombing incidents attributed by police to Welsh nationalist extremists protesting tomorrow's investiture of Prince Charles as Prince of Wales at Carnarvon Castle, 150 miles away. Morley Safer reports from there.
The investiture is supposed to be a medieval ceremony, but certain liberties have been taken. It is, in fact, a 20th century television happening, in which almost everyone hopes nothing extraordinary will happen. Amid the flavor of history, the royal coaches and landaus is the Royal Armored Ordnance Corps Bomb Disposal Unit, on the watch for Welsh nationalists who do not care to have an Englishman as Prince of Wales. The ceremony has little to do with actual tradition. It was a creation of the Duke of Norfolk, who is the Earl Marshal and uncle of the Queen, and of her brother-in-law, Lord Snowdon. And to all of them, the precision of the procession is as important as the procession itself. And thus, days of practice with everyone except the royal performers. Welsh Fusiliers lining the parade room, looking trim and smart, but not in the full ceremonial order that will be worn tomorrow. Even Taffy, their goat, was wakened for the 5 a.m. rehearsal. He's one of the 2 surviving goats in the British Army. The royal coaches will stop in front of the castle walls, and the party will enter. And here the prince's uncle takes charge, the former Mr. Tony Armstrong Jones. The dais and its plastic canopy were designed by Lord Snowdon, as were the 3 simple slate thrones. Around them, the seats for the invited guests, each of whom will be able to take his chair with him when he leaves, providing he pays $28. There are hundreds of live television cameras inside and around the castle, and the palace and the British Broadcasting Corporation are calling it the biggest television production in history. The climax of the production, or investiture, comes when Prince Charles kneels before his mother, the Queen, and pledges his fealty. He is then presented to thousands of loyal and disloyal Welsh subjects waiting outside the 4 castle gates. The entire cost of the production is around $750,000. Money well spent, according to Lord Snowdon. And after it's all over, everyone goes back to the brake linings factory to change their clothes. And by this time tomorrow, the Prince of Wales really will be the Prince of Wales. Not that he wasn't, in fact, already the Prince of Wales, even before he was invested with the title. And among his other titles are the following: Prince Charles, Duke of Cornwall, Duke of Rothesay, Earl of Carrick, Lord Renfrew, Lord of the Isles, Great Steward of Scotland, and Knight Companion of the Order of the Garter. All of which titles, by order of Parliament, give him no real power whatsoever. Morley Safer, CBS News, Carnarvon.
One of the 2 communication satellites operating across the Atlantic broke down yesterday. Emergency steps are being taken by the Communications Satellite Corporation to keep television traffic flowing, and, assuming they work, CBS will bring you tomorrow, live and in color, the investiture of Prince Charles as Prince of Wales, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Apollo 8 astronaut Frank Borman, commander of man's first flight around the moon last Christmas time, today flew to Moscow to make the first visit by an American spaceman to the Soviet Union. Borman, his wife, and 2 children are expected to spend 9 days in Russia. There's been no official public reaction from Moscow as yet to President Nixon's forthcoming visit to Romania. But when it comes, It's expected to be one of resentment. For a background report on the trip, here is CBS News diplomatic correspondent Marvin Cowell.
One of the reasons for the president's bold venture into Eastern Europe is his disappointment with Russian peacemaking efforts in Vietnam. Reliable sources say the president hoped for Soviet help in ending the war. So he had been led to believe by diplomatic dispatches, but so far anyway, that help has not been forthcoming. The president hopes his Romanian visit will suggest to the Russians that they are as vulnerable in Eastern Europe as his administration is in a way in Vietnam. Up to this point, the old rule of thumb in Soviet diplomacy had always applied. What's yours is mine, what's mine is none of your business. Encouraged by his White House advisor Henry Kissinger, who believes that two can play that game, the president is now shattering this time-honored principle. He has decided to reward Romania's so far successful defiance of Moscow, and by so doing to encourage others in Eastern Europe to follow Romania's example. President Nixon and Professor Kissinger made the basic decision on the Romanian visit, officials say, without even informing the Soviet Union. They realize Moscow is now very upset, perhaps to the point of developing second thoughts about opening missile limitation talks with the United States in August. But the Americans are plunging ahead anyway, hoping the president's lightning 20-hour visit to Romania will prod the Russians into helping to end the war in Vietnam. Marvin Cowell, CBS News, Washington.
By just a handful of votes, the House tonight passed the bill to extend the income tax surcharge. The tally showed 210 votes for the measure, 205 against it.
Prepare yourself for a little shock and some good news if you ever suffer from acid indigestion. This little tablet soothes and cools acid indigestion so effectively, it's hard to believe. It contains one of the most effective medicines ever discovered for acid indigestion. In tests at a famous college, it proved to neutralize excess acid in a matter of seconds. It worked so well, it's hard to believe. Prepared for a little shock. It's Tums, the medicine that's hard to believe till you take it. Tums, it'll make your stomach feel better now. Available in peppermint and 4 more flavors.
President Nixon today marked the 30th anniversary of a major reorganization of the executive branch of the government. He said in a speech that there is a crisis in public and congressional confidence in the federal government's ability to spend money wisely. Mr. Nixon said that government is much better than many of its critics feel. He added, however, that the problem in many areas today is not how much to spend, but how to develop programs that will work. Federal Reserve Chairman Martin strongly urged Congress today to approve President Nixon's fiscal program, particularly those moves to control inflation. Martin said the root of the trouble is that people have accepted inflation as a way of life. Some thoughts on this from Eric Severide. Eric?
Tonight is Fiscal Year Eve, an occasion very few people have been known to celebrate, except some Federal Treasury people in some years who have lifted a glass to drown their sorrows. Tomorrow begins the budget year for the federal government, the biggest receiver, the biggest spender, the biggest employer anywhere around. It is not a particularly happy holiday this year as national leaders contemplate the problem of managing an economy in which a vast structure of domestic welfare projects have been added on top of new weapon systems, on top of the leap into space, on top of a major war. It is a situation in which prices keep climbing while the stock market keeps sinking. It has always been a question whether we can have prosperity without inflation. Now the question may be whether we're going to have inflation without prosperity. The 10% income tax surcharge over which Congress is fighting is the centerpiece and chief symbol of the whole affair. The Nixon people have learned that inflation is more serious than they had thought back in January, because it is becoming a state of mind and emotion with both business and labor. The Nixon approach has been one of gradually applying the brakes, with expert opinions divided as to whether they are really taking hold. Taxes and inflation constitute the sleeper in the fate of this administration over the next 2 or 3 years. The president has been edging to the right step by step. A new tendency towards protectionism in foreign trade, a chill on the move to liberalize trade with East Europe, the push for the anti-missile system before the arms control talks with the Russians, a slow-up in the effort to enforce school desegregation, a new reconciliation with the military through the person of Secretary Laird, a stern face turned toward student rebels and city rioters. Mr. Nixon seems determined to build his own strength and his party's strength on the great central mass of middle-class and lower-middle-class Americans. But the inflation in both prices and taxes is eating into the patience as well as into the pocketbooks of this mass of people. Protesting mail to White House and congressional offices is becoming something of an avalanche. Vietnam may be built down, cities may remain quiet, students may go back to studying, but unless inflation is checked down concurrently, Mr. Nixon could find himself with his frontal enemies vanquished and his own army deserting behind him. Harry?
The averages were generally higher on the New York Stock Exchange today. Volume was 8,600,000 shares. The New York Index gained 20 cents. The American Exchange Index was up 14 cents. The Most Reverend James P. Shannon today was appointed Vice President of St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico, whose main campus is in Annapolis, Maryland, is famous for its Great Books program. Bishop Shannon resigned his post as Auxiliary Bishop of the St. Paul, Minneapolis Diocese last month. He said he was unable to accept what he called the impossible standards of Pope Paul's 1968 encyclical on birth control. Bishop Shannon, who holds a doctorate from Yale University and 12 honorary doctorates, has been teaching at St. John's, a non-denominational school, for 5 months. A strong opponent of the Vietnam War today was elected president of the 2 million-member United Church of Christ over a black pastor and a draft resistor. The Reverend Dr. Robert Moss, Jr., president of the Lancaster, Pennsylvania Theological Seminary, said the church is duty-bound to pioneer, to move ahead of society in the field of social justice. Both the men he defeated in the election immediately expressed their support.
What a good time. What a good time. What a good time for a kid. Catching sunbeams or dodging raindrops, looking for rainbows high on a hilltop, and suddenly, suspended in space, the top of the world is our special place where we play. What a good time. The good taste of Kent was meant for a day like today.
Hey, can you think of a better time than right now for the good time taste of a Kent cigarette? Millions of Kent smokers will tell you they just don't make them any better tasting. So how about it?
What a good time for a kid.
There's a lot of hollering going on in this nation, some of it on an organized basis. Charles Carrault reports from Spivey's Corner, North Carolina.
If you do not know what that man was doing, then you do not live down any dirt road in rural North Carolina. That man was hollering. In a day of urbanity and sophistication and telephones, almost nobody hollers anymore. A few who remember how have convened here at Spivey's Corner in what is grandly called the first annual National Hollering Contest. There's more to hollering than you'd ever think, unless you had talked, as we did, to O.B. Jackson beside the farm pond on his old home place. His neighbors will testify, O.B. Jackson is a hollerer. Why did anybody ever holler in the first place?
Well, I was just a little fella back yonder when I coming up and didn't have any communications through. That's the only way they had to talk to one another. Didn't have any telephones. They'd holler from one to the other and find out what they want to know. And I come on up and I took it up from my daddy holler.
Just hollering up the road to the neighbors?
Yeah, hollering up the road to their neighbors.
And hollering sort of died out?
Yeah, hollering sort of died out. Just a few keeps it up. I ain't forgot it yet.
Do you still do any hollering?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
But you don't have to anymore.
Oh, no. Well, when you feel a fella's feeling good and happy, he wants just to amuse himself. Get out and holler. Let people know he's feeling good.
Well, how did a typical holler go on a summer evening?
I'll start off even hollering, then I'll holler again. Okay, dokie.
So that is how it happened that old Erman Godwin and old John Thomas and some of them put up these signs, and the traffic all headed for Spivey's Corner, today, hollering center of the universe. They suffered a few youngsters who thought they could holler.
Being a young fella, I don't know about it, this old time hollering. But when I wake up in the morning, first thing I check to see if I'm breathing. And I'm just so happy to be alive. And so while the wife is boiling the grits and frying a set of eggs, I like to kick open the back door and just spread out and say,
And a few ladies accustomed to calling their men to supper. And then the real hollerers took over. And so they hollered all through the splendid, hot, echoing afternoon.
I lost my voice. In the end, it was O.B. Jackson's brother Dewey who was acclaimed hollering champion of Sampson County, North Carolina, and therefore the world. It is said that he can be heard hollering, "What a friend we have in Jesus," 2 miles away on a still day. Hollering on the stage, however, can never touch hollering on the farm. It clears your lungs, it relieves the silence, it assures your neighbors that all is well. You have never heard anything like it on a telephone, but you can hear it any twilight after sunset, anywhere in Sampson County. Anywhere. Charles Turalt, CBS News, Spivey's Corner, North Carolina.
All right, Charles. That's the news. This is Harry Reasoner. Good night.